You wives, submission begins where agreement ends. Oh, I agree with everything my husband does. That's not submission. Submission is, I don't agree with everything, but I submit anyhow. Submission is not, oh, I agree with everything our pastor does. Submission begins where agreement ends. I don't agree with that, but he's the pastor and God put him here. I will follow that. Submission to government begins where agreement ends. I have submitted to government by saying, yes, they can have this. When they say no, I've got to submit as well because that was my choice. We're going to stand up at that point and go, well, I'm going to stand up for godliness and righteousness. No, you're going to rebel against the agreement that you have made. You don't fill out the form. You don't ask their permission. You don't recognize they have any authority over your family because the family was never a part of their domain. Days are coming when, because society becomes more and more disobedient to parents, they will become less and less tolerant of those who try to restrain and train their children. By the way, just in passing, this is free. The only thing a tolerant society cannot tolerate is intolerance. You and I constitute the only group in this country that this country cannot accept. They can accept the gays. They can accept the whoremongers. They can accept the aliens. They can accept everything because we're just accepting everything. We're tolerating everything except you and I don't tolerate that stuff. Therefore, we can't fit in because they can't tolerate us because we're intolerant. That's where we come to conflict with the society. Verse 3 says they will be without natural affection. I want you to notice something here. He's talking about homosexuality. And I want you to notice something here. He said that the natural love, the love between a husband and wife is a natural affection. Love between a father and mother, or a father and his son and his children is a natural affection. The homosexual relationship is not a natural affection. Therefore, when people say to you, oh, he was born that way, I say that's foolishness because God didn't create anybody that way. It's not a natural affection. He said they'll be without natural affection, and as we go along in our society, this gay problem is going to become a tremendous difficulty for the incorporated church. I said 5 years ago, and I think I'm pretty close right now, I said 5 years ago, what's going to happen in this country is some state is going to legalize and recognize homosexual marriage. Yeah. When that happens, we're going to have this crowd from California or Oregon or Georgia or wherever run off to that state, get married, come back with their little marriage license, and say, hi, we're married, and we've got a problem because, folks, the reason I can drive in California is because of a thing called reciprocity. It says, you will recognize my driver's license here, and if you come to Oregon, we'll recognize yours. It says if you come to Oregon, you and your wife will recognize your marriage license so you can be married there. You don't have to get married again. The reciprocity problem is going to become an issue with a state that recognizes homosexual marriage, issues a marriage license, and then they come to our state. What's going to be happening in some of these incorporated churches in the near future is these couples are going to walk down the aisle hand in hand and say to the pastor, we love Jesus and we love each other too, and we want to sing in the choir and teach Sunday school and play the organ. And the pastor is going to say, over my dead body. And the next morning, some lawyer is going to walk into the pastor's office, drop down a brief, a complaint about that thing, and explain to the pastor that either he's going to change his view on gays or he's going to lose his building. And I want you to know he will lose his building because he has no defense. Right. Now, Brother Bob, I believe at that juncture, 80% of our fundamental Bible-believing brethren will get a revelation from the Word of God and change their view on homosexuality. Yeah. It's not going to affect us. I'm not worried about that part, the legal part of it, because I'm not a 501c3. I have no obligation. I'm not a not-for-profit corporation. I have no obligation to support public policy. But you understand what kind of fire we're going to come under our own brethren who have had to change their scriptural view in order to protect their property and to protect themselves. They must speak out against us.
Scottish Covenanters did that.
Yep. We're going to be targeted. We're going to encounter opposition. In that time, it's going to be crucial to be a church that is absolutely a lordship church for you in England. Thirdly, false accusers. That was those false accusers. There are a couple of books out. One by a guy named Booth, When God Becomes a Drug. Another book by Stephen Arterburn. I don't remember the title of it, I wish I did. Stephen Arterburn is joined with Meyer and Minrith in the Meyer and Minrith clinics, and they have this big, Christian psychology thing. Arterburn wrote this book talking about churches that are really cults. If you read Arterburn's book, you will recognize your church. All right? I read the book, and for about 2 months, every time I got up to preach, I heard Arterburn coming back. If you believe in pastoral leadership, if you believe that there's sin, if you believe in church discipline, if you believe in, if you believe in any of this stuff, boy, you're a cult. The church is trying to control you. You know how many churches are out here who are filled with psychology more than the Bible? I mean, you turn on some of these preachers on television, and what is it? It's psychology 101. We got James Dobson running around out here, and I mean, people bow at the altar, but the man's a psychologist, folks. Trust me. Stephen Arterburn is a psychologist. Minrith and Meyer are psychologists, and there is no such thing, listen to me, as Christian psychology. Amen. Psychology is a humanist philosophy, and you can't Christianize that. And as the trend becomes more and more toward the psychological approach to life, more and more you and I are going to be considered as cults, and we're going to be accused of being cultist and so forth. Beyond that, have you noticed the group identifications? The Aryan Nations thing, and the Jim Jones thing, and the snake handlers, and the Ayatollah Khomeini, and all that kind of stuff. You know what they call all those people? Fundamentalists.
Oh, yeah, right.
So then, those who are Bible believers, Bible thumper, fundamentalists, suddenly get grouped in with all the terrorists, with the guys who drink Kool-Aid, which, by the way, I noticed yesterday at lunch we had Kool-Aid here.
We hit the AR-15.
I appreciate this. I pastored a church in Meesick, Michigan, and the rumors going around that we